So, I welcome everyone this morning here in the room Rome for the Inspire conference. I'm happy to do the moderation of the first presentation session this morning here in Strasbourg. My name is Markus Meinert. I'm from the Federal Ministry for Environmental and Natural Affairs in Germany, in Berlin. It's my first time doing the moderation in English. We will see how it works. I hope very well. I did some nice talks to the speakers this morning. It went very fine. I think we have a very exciting mixture of presentations this morning. If you look at the outcomes of the fitness check of the Commission this year from June, there is an action plan, maybe you remember, with 10 actions to be done in the next years, maybe lots of years, to improve disseminating of environmental data, of implementing Inspire. And I found a lot of aspects in the 5 presentations we have this morning which fulfill to these actions. We have a mixture from several countries, France, Italy, hopefully Italy, it's still missing, from the Maghreb states, from Germany and from Spain, about different topics like fishery, soil affairs, groundwater affairs, forest affairs, and data disseminating. And so you see it's about a little bit about collecting data, it's about maintaining and disseminating data. All these aspects are more or less mentioned in the actions delivered as an outcome of this fitness check from the middle of the year. So that's why I think it's very interesting to see how the countries deal with this so far and what potential these examples deliver. As we haven't seen our Italian speaker so far, which would be the first one from 9 o'clock on, I would start with the second one, and in case our colleagues from Italy join us later, I would put them on the end. I would do all the presentations in a row, so we have no disturbing by 3 minutes questions in the meantime. Hopefully we finish around about after 70 minutes, so we have 20 minutes left for the discussion round and for questions from your side. So much. So that's it from my point of view for the beginning, for the start. As I said, we start with the second presentation. It is from Spain about fishery affairs and collecting data and providing data. I would like Francesco to start his presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes, that's right. I didn't see that. Put it to my side.
I don't know which one is. Maybe this one. Ah, 9. Yes. Okay. Here it is. Okay. So I'm gonna show you this project we are working on. It's called iSEAS, and it's a live program project. And we will see how SDI can help to improve efficient fishing. As the summary of the project is the landing obligation of fishing in a new regulation from the European Union. And there are 4 main objectives in the project, which are apply innovative solutions for discards, reduction and management, reducing, avoiding unwanted capture, valorizing the new biomass, bring to port, and the environmental and socio-economic impact. We will focus in this presentation in the 2 first. Maybe we have the in the 2 first objectives, the innovative solutions for discards and avoiding unwanted capture. The landing obligation of these cards, which are the practice of returning unwanted catches to the sea, has a very adverse socioeconomic and environmental impact. So the new common fishery policy has been set up to mitigate and prohibit them. From 2019, all the species, including the minimum legal size, cannot be discarded, and they have to be kept in the ships, quantified on board, landed, counted, and processed. And it cannot be used for direct human consumption. The objective of the project is minimize the legislation impact on the fishing industry, which is very concerned about the new regulation. And the reduction of discards is achieved by applying both existing knowledge and innovation solutions. It's not focused on fishing gear selectivities. The project is from the Environment iSEAS program. It has a total budget near 4 million euros, where the European Union contribution is near 50% of the total amount, near 2 million. It started in 2014, and it will finish next year, 2018, in June, so it's 4 years, the project. The partners of the projects are all Spanish partners. The coordinator of the project is the Marine Investigation Institute from the National Investigation Center. And the other partners are down here. Another technological center for fishing, the Supercomputation Center, which I represent. We are the technological partner of the project, which manage all the data and the processing of the data. The University of Santiago de Compostela, the Spanish Institute, Oceanographic Spanish Institute, that it's a very important partner because it's the SDI Marine, the Marine SDI is the one who have to manage the Marine SDI in Spain. So we are connected with them to all the information we publish to give it to them to publish it on the Spanish SDI. And we have also the producers of fishing of Port of Marine. They provide the ships, the commercial ships, to participate in the project. The areas we work is oceanographic campaigns in which the Spanish Institute of Oceanography participate in the north of Atlantic and the west of Ireland and the northwest, the west and north peninsular sea. So the focus of the project, as I said before, we are going to focus on the two first objectives: automatically quantify all the capture of the ships, and to avoid the unwanted capture. Here's the global schema of the solution we are providing to the project. And the data obtained from the ships, we have two innovative solutions applied to capture the data. One is based on cameras, on video cameras, to recognize automatically the species and send it to a database with a complete data model, which we will serve in a data server to a geoportal and different services, standard services, which can be accessed from desktop, other geoportals and other users. No? The users are the stakeholders, the harbors, the industries, the fish markets, the fleets, the researchers, and the administration. So to automatically quantify the capture, it's been developed a camera that have image recognition algorithms that can recognize the species and quantify them and send it to a computer. In that computer, we have developed an application which is called Redbox. It's responsible to collect the data generated by the system observation and also can be filled by an operator. The application is connected to the different navigation instruments of the ship, so it will collect the position, the heading, the speed of the ship, and has a very simple user interface that allows to visualize and modify the information. It's connected with the iObserver, with the camera, and the information is transmitted in real time to the analysis center, so to the server we have, via satellite communication. The geoportal we have developed have the typical tools to navigate and to select the information and access to consults of all of the information, and can be used for different users, the researchers, the owners of the ships, the administration. We have different roles for different users. We have also in the geoportal information about valorization, the valorization of the different discard species, because they are bringing to port and some are used for human process and consumption and non-human consumption, pharmaceutical and medical, for example. To avoid and reduce unwanted captures, there is a group of the Spanish Institute that develops also mathematical models to predict the presence of unwanted species, and we can represent the probability of find discards. So the ships, before going to sea, can check which areas are more suitable to go or not to go, because there will be more discards. All this information is served also with standard services. As I said before, we have map services publishing the information. For example, the captures. Here we can check the total weight of the capture of the ships. We can check the discards or no discards proportion. We have also feature services to represent vector data from hulls. We have also covered a service for the models to access to the results of the prediction models. We are applying also processing services, for example, to select an area of the prediction models, and we are implementing a catalog with all the information, with all the data, all the metadata related to the project, and all the services and the maps provided in the project. It's not finished yet, but we count that it will be finished at the end of this year. And because the time it's over, so I think I finish on time.
Thanks a lot, Francesco, for the presentation from Fishery on the project Spain is doing.
Good morning. So I work at the departmental at the Departmental Council of Mayenne in France, and I prepare this presentation with Jean-Luc Gauquelin, who is Director of Environment and is in charge of the soil mapping program. So we wanted to share our experience about the effects of the INSPIRE directive on the use of soil data in the department of Mayenne. I'll explain first why we collected soil data in Mayenne and how we shared it and the effects on the use of this data. So for those who don't know where Mayenne is, it's a French department in northwest of France, and Mayenne is a rural territory. We have a low population density, and agriculture is a very important component of the economy, especially livestock farming. So for us, soil is an important, a major component of the ecosystem, and that's why it's a key factor for both agriculture and environmental management. And that's the reason why the Departmental Council of Mayenne decided to invest significant funding in the soil mapping since 1980. So it has been a long-term process till 2016 to cover all the communes of the department. And since 1987, the digitization of maps began with including the previously collected information. It's a high-resolution collection. So this is an example of a soil map with the distribution of the soil types and all the soil properties like parent rock, the depth of horizons, water logging, etc. And initially, all this information was shared, was printed and shared with all the person who asked for it. And it was first sent to all the municipality, and everyone could revise and check the information. So it was it led to significant workload on printing costs. Since 2015, thanks to the implementation of geomayenne platform, all documents, maps, reports, data is available to all stakeholders online. So it's available for private, state agencies, communes, local governments, consultants, farmers, citizens, etc. The 261 maps and reports may be found in the map library, and the special data sets is documented and registered in the catalog. The access to the data and the services is in accordance with the INSPIRE directive. So we have discovery services that make possible to find any soil data and its metadata. And we have view services to display all the soil data is freely available. Anybody can check it, and we have 25,000 hits per web map service per year. It's not a big one, but something. And we it's we have also download services, and anybody can copy the datasets with a web feature service too. So why do we need soil data? How can we use it? And over the time, we have seen that the use of soil data has been diversified and intensified, and it's first due to the increasing requirements of French environmental regulation. But the information that provides the geomayenne allows a better knowledge of Mayan soils and address the increasing environmental issues like drainage, irrigation, fertilization, water quality, land development, etc. So we'll see some of the use in the Department of Mayenne. From all stakeholders, state agencies, farmers, or local governments. The main use of soil data in Mayenne is for agriculture because it's a key component of the economy. So it's very useful for the settlement of young farmers because it allows them to control the soil performance, the potential. They can redraw the plots. It facilitates crop management sequence, and it's important too for the control of agricultural practices and fertilization because of the knowledge of the ability to store nutrients, the water holding capacity, the depths, etc. So we'll see some example of maps. You can have simple maps with the classification of soil, or with simple soil properties like texture. That's very important for food production because it influences the capacity of retention of nutrients and water, for example. We have soil types, soil acidity that influences the growth of plants. And we can have more complex maps, like agricultural potential, that crosses several soil properties. And in this case, it's a map that shows the agricultural potential for the main crops in Mayenne. That means forages and cereals. So the green one is good and the red one is not so good. And a second example of use of soil data is for the management of effluent application, meeting regulatory requirements and protecting water resources from pollutant transfer. So in this example, in the commune of Pontmain, we have the soil map, and we have a map that is an analysis of the capacity of reusing effluent from several soil properties, like depth, waterlogging, texture, etc. So in the red areas, you can't use any effluent, and in the red one, it's a good capacity. And it's interesting for farmers or institutions that provide advisement to farmers. This is an example of how you can study a drinking water source area with different maps, maps of Thai soils on the soil behaviors map, like sensitivity to nitrate leaching or readily available water capacity. This kind of study can help, is very useful to make decisions to what measures you can adopt to protect water resources. Another example of soil data is for land development. So in the first case, choosing reference parcel for land classification. In Mayenne, we had a big high-speed railway project that crosses all the department from west to east. And the soil map has been very useful to organize land exchange with affected farmers. because you have to compensate not only with quantity, but also with quality on the agricultural potential of the plots. And it's also useful for locating and adapting compensatory measures, because the sequence to compensate, to protect wetlands is to avoid, to minimize, and compensate. So you can, with a map of type soils, you can deduce the wetlands areas, and if the road construction is affecting some wetlands area, you have to compensate the lost wetlands area, establishing new ones. It's very used for the identification of wetlands area within the framework of the French Water Framework Law of 2006, and especially it is used in zoning in urban planning for the local governments, and for environmental assessment for spatial planning or land management. You have an example here of a methodological guide published by the state agency in Mayenne that explains how to make the identification of the wetlands, and they explain too how to use the soil maps of that the Departmental Council of Mayenne published to help to identify the wetlands. It's not the only criteria, but it's an important one. So this is an example of wetland soils map in a commune, or if you have a project like in this case a logistic park project. So you'll see which area could be affected, and you have to compensate it. So in conclusion, we can say that soil is an essential element of sustainable development, because of the wide range of services it renders to us, like food or energy production, regulation, storage of water or carbon, water purification, reservoir of biodiversity. Soil data also provides important information to address the evolving environment issues, and soil misuse leads to unavoidable disorders that have very important consequences for the coming generations. And for the Departmental Council of Mayenne, it was very important to take the INSPIRE directive as a pretext to make the dissemination of soil data, and that make really sense for us, either for the agriculture or the environmental protection. And it's a strong heritage of data we share with people, because it's 35 years of work, and it's thousands of euros we shared freely, and it's totally public, it's free for anybody. However, we see also that the use and the interpretation of the soil data may require sometimes more technical expertise for complex analysis. It's not so easy to understand the usability, the quality of the data. And I finish. I just want to say that for us, INSPIRE was not a goal, but it was helpful to improve the sharing culture we don't have, the quality of the data, because we are obliged to share good data, and that's why it's important for us. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ingrid. Our next speaker, we will stick to the rule I explained in the beginning. All the discussion for the rest of the speakers is done in the end. Our next speaker is Tobias Mato from the Forest Administration on the other side of the River Rhine. And first question, Tobias, recording is okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, sir. Just a question of logistics. Are the presentations starting earlier than foreseen? Because I am.
Are you the Italian guy?
Which Italian guy?
For the first presentation. Sorry.
No.
We are missing one Italian for the first presentation. We skipped it.
No. Okay, I didn't know. No, I'm not the Italian guy for the presentation. I just entered the room, and I was intending to follow the previous presentation, but it was already started, so I missed part of it. So is there a way to listen to it again? I don't know.
The presentations will be published on videos on the Inspire conference webpage, so you can watch them there.
Thank you.
Okay, Tobias,
Yeah.
it's on you now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, my name is Tobias. Like I said, thank you for the introduction. I'm coming from the other side of the Rhine, Baden-Württemberg, southeastern part of Baden-Württemberg. Yeah, and I'm coming from the forest administration. 1/3 of Baden-Württemberg is forest, 1.3 million hectares, so quite big areas. And we are in the lucky situation that GIS and geodata has a very long tradition in our organization, since 150 or 160 years, beautiful maps. And of course, digital geodata also has quite a long history at our organization. That means we have a huge array of geodata, and I'm really lucky with that, because we can play with these data. And I would like to give you 2 examples of our daily work with GIS in our organization, and I'd like to show you how we use geodata to help somehow in decision support for our managers in the company. So, one interesting data source that we have since 2 years is remote sensing derived tree heights. The darker the colors, the higher the trees. So for our whole country, we know exactly how high every single tree is. It's cool, but it's extremely boring if you just look on such a map, because it's not really information. It gets more interesting once you combine it with other geodata. So example 1 is the aspect of storm risk. It's one of the biggest risks in forestry. The higher your trees get, the more riskier it gets. You can see the wind blowing from here, and if it blows enough, afterwards it can look like that. So this is of course an economic loss, and it's also really dangerous to work in such areas. So of course we try to prevent such situations by our management. Well, how can we influence storm risk? We know there are some predictors for that. Of course, we cannot influence how and where the wind blows, but we know that some tree species are more at risk than others. In this example, spruce. It's the most labile tree species. We know that tree height is a very important factor. The higher the trees are, of course, the more they can move. And soil, as we heard in your presentation, is extremely important for that, because the roots of the trees anchor in the soil. So if the soil is, for example, waterlogged or has a bad texture for the roots, the trees lack of stability and they will be thrown. So, case study. Last year we were working in Biberach, which is the violet one. We're here somewhere, just over the Rhine. And we knew that in this part of the forest we had a really high, I call it abstract, risk of storm. We knew in that area that we have some more than 1,000 hectares of spruce, which is a risky tree species on waterlogged soils, which is also bad. We knew that most of these trees were not really old, but not really young, so they had a certain height. That also is a rather risky factor. And from science, new findings, we know that the important height spectrum from trees is between 20 meters and 30 meters. So up to 20 meters is not really dangerous, and up to 30 meters it gets really, really dangerous. So our goal was to translate this abstract danger. Everyone in this region knows, yeah, storm is a big factor here. But if you ask them, well, how big is the danger? How many hectares of forests are at risk? You get such a spectrum of answers, because everybody's answering on personal feelings. So our goal was to locate where is the storm risk actually, visualize it, quantify it, and based on this information to plan strategies how to deal with that risk. So we take our tree height data, we combine it with our soil data. Of course, we have more soils than just red and green ones. We categorize all the different soil types into stable or unstable. We run a very simple model and we get maps like these. So the redder they are, the higher the storm danger is. So first goals are fulfilled. We know where the high-risk spots are, and we can visualize that to the local guys who are working there. And now the second question is for our managers. Well, how much wood actually is at risk? So we take the next data source we have, so-called point sampling inventory, the same map again. And then through our forests we have these points every 100 to 200 meters where we measure many data, very many data. One example here is we measure the standing wood volume, cubic meters of wood. So the bigger the dots are, the more wood is standing there. And if we intersect these two themes, we get a summary like that. The numbers are fake, of course, because it's very sensible. We get such a summary of hectares and cubic meters of wood for each risk class. So the green numbers are not really interesting for our managers, but of course we were discussing the red and the yellow ones with the people who actually are doing the decisions out there in the field. So if we know as an organization we have 50,000 cubic meters in a quite high risk class, we need to find measures how to deal with it. Either cut them before they get thrown by the storm, accept the risk and know that you have some money at risk and so on. So this is something that our managers were quite lucky to have, and out of these data they developed some strategic plans. I'm not going to talk about them because that's not a forestry event today. Second example, we don't only cut trees or think about how to make money, but ecology is also a very important part in our organization. This is a great animal, the caper kei. It's living in the Black Forest, in the mountain regions, also in the Vosges here in France. Very big bird, endangered species in Germany, and since 50 years or so we see that their numbers are decreasing. They're either being eaten by foxes or they freeze to death when the spring is very cold up there in the mountains. And what's a really important part that can be influenced by the forestry sector is they need a certain spectrum of habitat. So that's how a living room of these birds looks like. The important thing is they want light on the soil. So they don't want too dense forests. They want such a very open structure like that. And we know from recent decades that our forests get denser and denser and darker, which is bad for that animal. So we have certain areas in our forest where we say this is a potential living room of that species, and we want to make the forest light again to make it comfortable for these birds. So we have dedicated areas in our forests where we say we want to have 10% of gaps in the forest. Now we tell that the local people, and after 5 years we asked them, well, how many gaps do you have? Well, 10%. Why do you know that? How do you know that? Well, I guess. Okay, so we said, let's have a transparent, objective look. Take the remote sensing data from tree heights, and if you have a gap, your tree height is 0 probably, or 1 meter, some bushes and something like that. We get maps like that, and again we can make summaries per each forest unit, and we can see where are the goals fulfilled and where do we need to create more gaps. And again, this is a map I don't have in my presentation because it's from last Friday. It's completely new. If we don't have enough maps, we make such decision support maps. So we have different colors behind the map, and we have made a little easy model where we just checked 5 or 6 geodata themes, combined them, and said, well, certain parts are more suitable than other parts for making gaps. And we give that to the people, and usually they're quite happy to have some means of help for actually doing the work they have to do. So these are just 2 little examples I wanted to share. My conclusion is it's really great to have high quality geodata, because we can very easily help to support decisions in our organization. It's a real treasure, and I often have the feeling that there's much more potential to do with existing geodata than just looking on simple maps. We have to combine data more. The second thing is it's important that the GIS department knows the daily challenges of an organization, because our managers usually, they wouldn't think about all the potential GIS offers when they have a problem. They wouldn't always come to you and say, hey, I have a problem, can you help them? You also have to offer your help and go to them. Then another thing is, most goals are reached quite easily. You don't have to strive for perfection here. This is one question that arises. Next week there's another question. So don't say, I need 2 years to make it perfect. No one is interested after 2 years. Then the problems have changed. So be proactive, don't strive for perfection. And of course, these results are not perfect. And if you transport the results to your organization, then be transparent about the shortcomings and say, hey, this is just something that was created somewhere in the office. We have some assumptions behind that. If I show a map like that to a guy who's working since 20 years in his forest, he will look at it, and after 1 minute he would say, well, that's wrong, and that's not possible. So you have to tell them, yeah, of course, that's why we have you, and this should just help. And in 80 or 90% of the cases, this should be right. And then you have a really good acceptance of your work. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tobias, for your closer view on habitat improvement and risk management by forest administration. Now is the last call for our colleagues from Italy. It's one presentation we skipped in the beginning. Is there any one of you, Antoniella Navarrete or Simona Costamaglia, in the room now? So that's unfortunately the case. So we are done with the presentations. I, at this moment, thank all the speakers for their discipline on timing. It went very well. We have a little more space for the discussion now. For that reason, I would like the 3 speakers, Ingrid, Tobias, and Francesco, to take the floor at the microphone there at the little desk. And I open the floor for questions to you, to the audience. Take your chance, you won't get it again. No questions at the moment? I would start with one question then to break the ice a little. Francesco, your presentation was, my impression, a little bit from the economical point of view, how supports this system iSEAS the fishery. Do you know anything about how the results are used from the nature or habitat experts, for example, to have a monitoring or to do a closer look on the development of populations? Do they use these data for that?
Yes, one of the partners of the project, the Oceanographic Institute of Spain, it has several institutes in Spain. And one of them studies of the species, of the biological, and is the assessor to make all the database and all the data model we have developed for the project. Also, this institute is the responsible to the Marine SDA in Spain. So we make the data model and then give them back to publish and to publish in the Marine SDI.
Further questions, Mr. Schulz? Wait a second. Did you get a microphone?
Okay, thank you. I would like to come back to your very interesting lecture on soil mapping in the Département de Mayenne. And my question is, what has this to do with INSPIRE? Do you intend to present your soil maps in conformity with INSPIRE and take all the load of work you would have to do so? Or is it just the general idea to use services to make all your maps be downloadable and so on?
Okay. Nowadays, the soil data is not fitting the INSPIRE model. It has been a big work just to put it available in conformity with the directive, the INSPIRE directive. And it may be a second step, but I think that for this step, it's not a departmental issue. It's a national issue or a European issue, because there's a project, I think, at the European level. And it's for me, it's very difficult to make this second step in an isolated way. Because we will see it in France. We are a little late in all those schemes. And for instance, in the urban, for the urban plans that land use, they are classified in land use. We have a national standard, and Mr. Pascal Laurie is here from the national, le CNIG, Conseil National d'Information Géographique, and the way that has been chosen in France is to have a national standard, geo-standard, that fit also INSPIRE and the necessary regular, the framework, the laws in France that fits both of it. So maybe in this way it could be more easier to reach the INSPIRE model, etc. But the trouble, the background trouble is that the INSPIRE model doesn't fit necessarily the needs of people. Those maps, those soil data had been collected and structured and published for some for Mayenne's needs, I should say. And if you want to adapt this to an INSPIRE model that's for European infrastructure, maybe it doesn't fit exactly. But I didn't mention it because I have no time. We also are feeling all the soil data is being registering in a national soil database called DONSOL, and it takes just this, all the profiles, one by one, thousands of profiles are filling, and Mr. Gauquelin is going to retire. I hope he'll finish before. It's a huge work. So it's difficult to fit anything, but I think it's a goal. I hope it won't take 35 years.
I'm not a soil expert, but just FAO is very much interested on that. We have a big division working on soil. I know there was a new soil standard, ISO standard, recently developed with our participation. My question is, this source data for the soil maps, from where you get the data? It's not from the satellites or something you are getting what the countries have or what it is? Because in all developing countries where we were, the soil maps are extremely old. They're like 25 years old or something. So if you really digitize these old maps, it's not the same quality what was 25 years ago. It's a lot of land degradation, a lot of things. So our people were thinking, is there any possibility? I contacted Digital Globe also to see with the very, very high resolution 30 centimeter satellite imagery with infrared, if you can get like what is the soil quality somehow with machine learning and other things, because you need to validate many times. I have their answer, but I want to see like what you think and from where your data comes, like initially.
Mr. Gauquelin is the soil specialist, but they make studies, survey on each commune with a high resolution. They measured in the field, they described in the field, they make profile 1 per hectare. That's why it takes so much time, but it was the purpose, the goal was to cover all the communes, and the goal was to cover with a very fine, very thin. Yes. If you go on geomayenne, you could see also the report of each commune on all the study that was made, and it's with profile, with laboratory analysis, etc., etc. It's a huge work, and we just see the map and we say, oh, it's pretty, but behind this there is a lot of work on the information. That's why I mentioned we publish the maps and the reports. Mr. Gauquelin was very, for him it was very important to give all the information, because the specialist or the consultants, anybody can use it and go further if they want, because in the data there is only 4 attributes or 5 attributes, but in fact there is much more information.
Again, for soils, and do you plan an update of this data? Because perhaps by crossing with auto data to detect where there can be erosion or such kinds of phenomena?
I don't think the departmental council will invest more money for putting it for actualization. I don't think so. But maybe it will be a problem because, for example, Mr. Gauquelin told me in some areas when they make a study, they found, this is a wetland area, and so you can't accept the project of effluent management. But in fact, if you go in the field, you see that there's an evolution, there was drainage or something, and you have the soil marks, but in fact it's no more wetland area. And it's important not to base anything just on the data. You have sometimes to go in the field to check if it's already like this. It's just an help to something, and you have always to cross with several other data. Soil is not the unique component of ecosystem. It's an ecosystem.
Further questions? There was nothing on forestry so far. You don't get away with that. I will do a question. There's no way. Tobias, you explained to us how you do a little bit the risk calculation depending on the soil, on the heat of the trees, for example, the kind of the trees. Is there any chance or possibility to combine your data with long-term meteorological data, for example, to get an overview how wet the soil is and makes it more, in the short run, more vulnerable for the trees, or how the long-term development of storms is in an area? Can you combine these data in your system too?
Well, for storm risk damage, the most important factor, of course, is when does the storm happen and from where does it come. And now we know about a lot about little storms, I call that, and our forests are robust against them. real big storms are extreme events. People always talk about that's a century event, once in a century, but it happens every 20 years. So, and then, of course, the last one was 20 years ago. It came straight from France. Thank you. And we don't actually work with meteorological data or forecasts of storms because they are so seldom that we cannot model them. What we can do is we have really detailed data about past storm events. I showed you that slide with point sampling. So we know exactly on which point how many trees are standing there. 20 years ago, we did that here in the Black Forest. In the autumn, in the winter, Christmas. It was Christmas present. We had the storm. So in spring, we went there again, and we looked, oh, I had 5 trees here last autumn, now I have 0. Okay, so we know exactly which trees survived, and we know which attributes they had, which species, how high, how dense, and so on. So we are actually modeling the storm indirectly from it's a kind of survival analysis. We do it like that, and of course, with that we can also think about what happens if the storm comes from the other side. But usually we know the really big ones are coming from the Atlantic Ocean, from the western side. So by purpose, we don't really use meteorological data.
Okay, thanks.
I have another forestry question. You mentioned in the beginning of your presentation that you have the height of every tree. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious, I have 2 questions. One, technology question, was that done by stereo imagery or LiDAR mapping? And then the second part of the question is, you know, given that you have this information for every tree, have you then derived above ground biomass? Do you also have the species type? Are you using multispectral imagery to get that, or how are you doing that? Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so it's stereo imagery, yeah. 2 years old, so it's very fresh, and we get the data and we see how much we can do with it, and we're really stoked about what's going on there. So yeah, it's stereo images in a resolution of 1 meter by 1 meter, and then we have some logic behind it because we know the top of a tree, something like that, if it's a conifer, or something like that when it's a broadleaf tree. So we have some algorithms who count back. So actually we get the images in 1 by 1 resolution. Big trees are much bigger, so we make the data broader to 5 by 5, and then we always take the highest height, and this is the top tree height. So rather easy actually to work with that.
I get. Yes, that's a good explanation. But how do you know where the ground is?
Oh yeah, we have a digital, how you call it, DGM, digital model of the ground. It was derived some years ago by what's it called? I don't know that. We know the ground. We know the elevation of the ground. I don't know the technique behind it. I'm a forester. I'm just a forester. We get some data with Earth surface. We have it, yeah, and then we simply do the arithmetic. So we calculate the distance between our vegetation height and the ground. We can do that.
So on a tree by tree basis, you have an uncertainty associated with the height calculation, and it could be largely contributed to by either the interpretation of the imagery or the location of the ground.
Of course, there's uncertainty, but we don't care if the tree is actually 31.3 or 32. It's okay for us to have it in by 1 meter. That's good. And again, this data might be 1 year old. The trees grow, so we have great information compared to the time before. We didn't have anything at all, so it's good. But you're right, you always have to know the shortcomings of the data. And so we know there's something, an uncertainty. I would think it's about 1 meter, For example, if you're in a really steep valley, it might be bigger. Yeah, but for the majority of our forests, it's really good to work with. And we have of course, people who are working in the forest, and they validated the things. And they said, hey, we can work with that, and then I'm happy. I don't really know the last detail of the technology behind it, but we know we can work with it. Okay.
So we have 5 minutes left. 5 minutes chance for more questions. Yes, please. Wait a second.
Yeah, one more question about forestry. As far as I know from my experience, Capercaillie is sensitive to the forest stand types, as you mentioned, but the main factor of problems with this species also stem from disturbance, meaning traffic on the roads, people hiking in the forests, and so on. Have you tried to investigate that factor also using geese, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also another part of the work in protecting Capercaillie. There are many factors. Habitat is just one. Tourism is another one, or, for example, windmills, bioenergy. Yeah, there are many conflicts, and we're using these data in an environmental field, of course, and that's just different parts of one problem, but it's very useful.
If that's it, then I thank to the audience for the contributions, for the discussions, to the speakers, Dennis too, for preparing their presentations and answering all the different questions. I have to say, I'm happy I choose this moderation for this session. I got lots of new ideas. I got a nice overview on our different areas of our environment: soil, water, fishery, forests. And I would like to do that again. It was nice to have you and you here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. It's a long time, today and tomorrow up to Friday. Hopefully you have some more interesting sessions like today. Take your chance and do networking like we started today. Thanks to you all.
Thank you very much.
Tobias?